Cryptopia?
Yeah, but we do go to a few events throughout the year.
Okay. Okay. Go travel around. See
Yeah,
what.
actually next week I'm going to Amsterdam for Money 2020,
Yeah.
which is a fintech conference
Yeah.
for players like ourselves and our future clients. That'll be
Yeah.
good for us as a business to start getting some exposure and global exposure if you want to get
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah. That's the way to go
Like,
too.
we initially started with, the usual conference like Art Basel, Bitcoin Miami, ETH Denver, all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
as we kind of have matured, both as a industry and as a company,
Mhm.
we've realized that there's lower hanging fruit with financial institutions
Yeah.
who really haven't made the move yet to transition into this field.
Right.
And it's because
Right.
these individuals need to be right, not first. Right?
Yeah.
So they've let the guinea pigs come in. Now they're actually looking for not the cowboys of the Web3, but rather the clean cut individuals
Right.
that haven't yet rugged anyone.
Well, and it makes sense that because crypto conferences are only going to get you so far.
Correct.
And then you actually have to engage your product into the place that you're at, right?
Right.
Fintech is a great place to start. Document control, like all of those different avenues. How we doing, buddy? Yeah. Cool. Well, let's just talk about it.
great.
First, my name's Dallin.
Sean,
Good to meet you.
Ubair, nice to meet you.
Great. So who are you guys? Who are you representing? What are we
we
doing?
are Nomyx. We are a real world tokenization platform and development company. Right now, we're working on trying to legitimize the industry as quickly as we can. We kind of feel like the quicker this industry becomes legitimate, the quicker we can start utilizing like what we want to offer.
Yeah.
And right now, we're trying to take real use cases of real assets, put them on the blockchain, and create transparency and trust to allow people to start transacting a lot cleaner and more efficiently. So that's kind of what Nomyx is.
And one of the primary core competencies that we have that differentiate us from other Web3 developers in this space is because I've spent about a decade in one of the most heavily regulated industries. And that background makes bankers and fintech institutions very, very comfortable.
Yeah.
And we have some of the best legal resources that this country has to offer, luckily, and their entire incentive is to create case law for tokenization of real world assets. So what we bring to the table for our clients is excellent documentation, which makes not only our client, but also the end user, who is the institutional investor or the accredited investor. We are creating analogies, or we don't use the B or C word, actually. Funnily enough, blockchain and crypto is the B and C word for bankers and fintech, at least after FTX's collapse. So we started calling it digital synthetic of real world assets.
Okay. So what kind of assets are we talking?
So currently we're working on one of our first customers was actually Phygital Products. It was a affiliate marketing program. It was more and some retail consumer goods where we helped them address the issue of cash flow. Mm-hmm. So initially these businesses would onboard their members and they would produce 4 or 5 different drops throughout the course of the year. And one of the biggest challenges that they had to face was spoilage, because these are very limited edition stock and they were only applicable for Christmas or Easter or whatever. And secondly, cash flow, because they would have to either borrow or utilize their own funds to fund the manufacturing of their products.
Right, leverage that first.
Correct. So what we ended up doing is offering their consumers or their clients membership-based tokens, and those membership-based tokens were accompanied by redemption of physical or digital products, the digital products. So you could either get courses that are going to come out through the course of the year, right? Educational content, or there were certain parts of the website where you would have limited edition drops, which could only be accessed by this digital token being in your wallet. And when you signed a transaction with your NFT, you could redeem that $50 or $100 or $200 item for $0 and only pay shipping.
Right.
What that allowed our customers to do is they had no spoilage, because everything was spoken for on day one. When they purchased their token, they said, oh, in month 3, I want X, in month 4, I want Y, and in month 8, I want Z.
Yeah,
so now they were able to produce very, very tight numbers for the products that they were actually offering.
Is
their
that where
consumers.
the idea came from? Was this first use case?
Correct.
Okay, and then
Well, it's kind of funny because that's where us as a business have matured, right? I mean, at the beginning, we were taking on projects where we just wanted to get into the Web3 space and really try to just make a name for ourselves. And then we completed this project and had a lot of success with that client. And then our next client that, you know, has approached us has really kind of pivoted to more of a, I would say, you know, financial instrument for financial institutions to start creating liquidity with their assets. And now we've evolved in a company to go from a membership loyalty token to now a financial token or a financial instrument token that allows people to put that to market to create liquidity and to drive you know, more investors to what they're trying to offer, you know. And right now, you know, most people are having a tough time getting their investors because their pools are so small. Now
Right.
we're opening those pools up and allowing more people to get involved.
So let me give you an example of this where we're not just talking hypotheticals at this point. We're well past the point where the big boys are now coming to the table. Like I'm part of the cohort at Digital Assets Week, which is usually hosted, funnily enough, in the same week as Consensus.
okay,
So Consensus is more along the lines of, yay, NFT projects, whereas Digital Assets Week is more JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, US Bank,
yeah,
creating those platforms to, let's say, trade treasury bills, right? Where JP Morgan just completed one of their pilot programs that started in November last year. They were able, and their entire objective for the program was to increase the amount of intraday liquidity for treasury bills, which is a highly liquid asset. Now, when you're trading on E-Trade and you sell a stock, technically it's T plus 2 day settlement, right? You
yeah.
sold it today. They might give you a grace period if you know, have a little pleb account.
Right.
But when you're like looking at an account worth hundreds of millions of dollars, now you got to wait for those 2 days for your settlement to be completed before you can leverage those funds again.
Yeah.
So what JP Morgan ended up doing is they ended up creating digital synthetics of these treasury bills on a limited run on their personal or their private blockchain, and they ended up utilizing it for instant settlements, right? So if you had cash in your account, this person is trying to offload $1 billion in T-bills, it was instantaneous liquidity attained for both parties.
Yeah.
What that allowed them to do is generate an additional $700 billion worth of business over a 30-day period.
And with the JP Morgan case, they also how sensitive were they to the B and C word? Were they just saying, we're just doing this thing, we'll have an instant transaction, we're not going to actually talk about the underlying
Right,
tech,
they did.
which they never do anyway.
No.
You don't hear them talk about COBOL.
No,
you know?
you don't need to,
Yeah.
right? You don't need to understand TCP to use
Yeah,
internet.
right, exactly.
Right. So what they started calling them was just digital synthetic treasury bills.
Mhm.
Right. They were the head of, it was the head of digital assets that's actually spearheading this project. And funnily enough, I've noticed at certain banks such as US Bank, the head of digital assets actually reports under the ESG compliance department, which kind of does make sense.
Yeah.
Because you are, at the end of the day, removing the burden, you're using less data centers.
Right.
You're reducing the total fees, the maker taker fees that you might have to generate as a result of this transaction, especially if the asset has been custodied somewhere else.
Right.
Right. Now, does that mean the banks are going to end up passing that saving down to the customer? Maybe. More likely, they like their profits. And this is going to be their trade-off for being transparent.
Yeah.
Right. We'll be transparent as long as we can collect another $14 billion every 90 days.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So how do they do like a one-to-one relationship between these digital assets and the actual?
So currently what they've ended up doing, one of the core principles here was that the current NFT standards were not robust enough to comply with security standards or to comply with SEC regulations. Like if I'm into an NFT project and I sold it to you, I don't know if you can go sell it to Xi Jinping or Kim Jong-un or someone along those lines.
Yeah.
There might be an oligarch in Russia that picks
Yeah.
up something from my project. Now, unless my project is A, built on the diamond standard, which is upgradable, so I can exercise some level of control over it, and B, it has additional compliance factors baked into the code, such as what is the digital identity of the person that's transacting on it. It's basically going towards the permissioned or is a semi-permissioned chain, where unless you're an accredited investor, unless you've actually come in and validated this wallet to prove that you are who you say you are, you're based in the geographic environment that you say you are,
Right.
you are an accredited investor. So whatever claim you're making with your digital identity, that needs to be validated before you can transact on my network.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So those kind of items, and plus the ability to place liens on certain tokens, the ability to claw back certain tokens if you've broken some rules and regulations, because compliance, a lot of people, especially in the Web3 industry, think of it as a one and done factor.
Yeah,
I'm compliant,
right. Yeah,
I'm finished.
Yeah.
It's
Compliance is a
ever
verb.
evolving,
Yeah.
ever evolving.
Yeah, that's actually my background as well as some regulatory stuff. So when you guys, so this particular pathway, right? What is the actual method for this validation? It's like a KYC process.
Correct.
Okay, and that's keeping you out of OFAC. That's keeping
Correct.
You out, yeah. That's so.
So what we found actually is that a lot of people don't even think about this. They come rushing to us with this great idea,
Yeah.
and we kind of have to back them down a little bit first and walk them through what we as a company and our principles and how we address integrity and things like that. Because there's a lot of great ideas out there, but sometimes the idea is just not going to comply with regulatory impact and things like that. So what we want to do is obviously talk about that side of the business first with our clients to make sure that we're not taking them down a road that's going to bite them in the back later. And then more importantly, as a company, we just don't touch that kind of stuff. We're running away from it as quickly as we can, because we feel our company brings value when we can get projects regulated.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, just hearing the cohort talk at Digital Assets Week, I almost feel like 70 to 80% of the companies that exist today, the burden of compliance is going to get so high that they're going to get out-regulated out of their own industries.
Yeah.
Right. So it's an interesting time right now.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. I was actually glad to see the regulatory panel downstairs
Yeah.
earlier, because that's exactly the kind of thing that we're going to need, where businesses are working with regulators to actually get ahead of it before, the big conglomerates show up and make it best for them and, stomp on everything.
Grandfather themselves in, and then it's done.
So and this is always such an interesting topic for me and the projects that we work on over at Nerd, because where do you find the balance between this decentralized, anonymized tech that we have that people like, crypto junkies like to lean into, because that's a cool tech, and then you also have like, I don't want to sell assets to a drug lord in Cuba. Like what do we do? Like, where's the balance there for you?
Okay, so it really just depends upon what kind of information you're storing, right?
Yes,
like
it does.
At some point, the internet was completely anonymous. You could do whatever you chose on the internet, and odds were no one was going to come knocking on your door. Right. And then as slowly as the industry matured, the need for that regulatory compliance and that non-anonymous end user had to come in order for the industry to mature. Right. So I think there's still going to be use cases for completely anonymized.
For probably both, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think we're still in this, just taking the analogy of what they were using downstairs, like we're in 1994 of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're a little bit more advanced than that. I think we're at the stage where the Nokia had just come out with their Symbian OS, and everyone was like, oh my God, the Symbian OS is the best thing since sliced bread. But iOS and Android have not yet come out, right? Those platforms that allow you to very quickly spin up applications on top of their platforms that allows my grandmother to utilize her banking app or to play Angry Birds or Candy Crush or whatever, right? It's moving away from me having to download a .exe file, install it on my computer, then crack it just to play a video game, right? Once those kind of platforms come out, and we are seeing those already, where you have no code solutions, and I think AI, the advent of AI, is going to push that or catalyze that adoption even quicker.
Yeah, I think so too, because AI gives you a pathway into certain levels of anonymity, but still gives you like more almost human interaction, because like I have a fraud background, and we had all these algorithms built to identify different transactions, different patterns and stuff, but at the end of the day, all of them still needed a human to look through.
Supervised learning.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It was the person who's making the labels.
Exactly. It's the person who's making all the labels. And so like introducing AI to that process where like, yeah, you can train the algorithm, but now you're also really training the model to like
Correct.
identify and teach it to ask you, you know,
Mhm.
that's the big one is I'm not sure, can you tell, you know, that when they ask for that, but I do think that it's going to contribute to that anonymity side with a higher KYC process,
Correct.
Yeah.
you know, so
And with ZK syncs, it's going to be a balance between the two as well, right? Because technically, I can be anonymous to, let's say, Snowbird, right? But I can be not anonymous to Utah Driver License Authority,
yeah,
right? So the
Yeah.
DMV might have all my information, and I might use my DMV credentials to validate myself at third-party vendors,
yeah,
where I
right.
remain anonymous, where all you're querying is, are you a resident of Utah?
Yeah.
Do
Here's my
you-
birth certificate.
Here's your birth
yeah,
certificate.
That's exactly the kind of document control stuff that I think states like Utah, if they really want to change some stuff, they get on board with this,
Mhm.
you know, because I think that that's ultimately where these things are going to show up, right?
So what's going to be actually really tricky with what we're trying to do and what the DGen Web3 cowboy has been accustomed to over the last 3 years are DAOs, right?
Yeah.
You have huge DAOs such as MakerDAO, Compound, UDAO, which have varying levels of treasure chests, but every single bear market they get stuck with heaps of toxic debt.
Yeah.
Right, where a token will go up 300% or 3,000%, which is baby numbers in crypto.
Right. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and
it's all the way up to 8 cents.
Yep. And then I end up, let's say, taking $1 million in Pepe
Yeah.
and staking it on MakerDAO MakerDAO? Yeah, MakerDAO, getting a 50% LTV out against that in 500 grand.
Yeah.
And now Pepe collapses 80%.
Yeah.
Technically, my assets,
leveraged.
my assets worth 300 grand. They're going to do a margin call. I'm not going to respond to that margin call because I'll just keep that 500 grand in my pocket. No, thank you. So now they're stuck with toxic debt that A, isn't yield generating anymore because all the pools that spun up around there and all the LPs that were actually paying out a yield are now gone.
Yeah.
Because the token collapsed.
Yeah.
And now either you wait until the next bull market to hopefully recover for break even,
Right.
or you just have to write off a lot of toxic debt.
Yeah.
Now, MakerDAO actually had a consensus about a month ago or a month and a half ago where they're aiming to, their mandate was to dedicate at least $50 million out of their treasury into real world assets. Right.
Cool.
And the
Okay.
entire objective of this is to counterbalance some of the more speculative assets that are on their treasury street. So they
need that stability.
Yeah, so they have a constant recurring source of revenue, which at least pays for their server costs, pays for their overheads, and they're certain that this asset, even in the worst case scenario, because it's pegged to a real world asset, the arbitrage opportunity on that is going to be maybe they'll use 10%, 15% of the face value until some other party steps in to purchase it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is coming. And I think MakerDAO is the trailblazer there. And I think there's about 5 or 6 other DAOs that are just waiting on the side
See
just
how
to
it
see how it
goes.
goes.
It's smart. It's smart. That's a cool idea though, because, well, yeah, we're actually going to be talking to a community DAO. I just talked to them before you guys. It's too bad that you're going to have to take off soon because I'd love to actually see that conversation. Just kind of pick their brain on exactly that. What do you do with these risks and because what do you do?
So my main question to them would be, how are you making sure everyone that's part of your DAO, and because Maker, you can buy it on Uniswap.
Right.
Right. So how am I certain that someone in Kim Jong's cohort isn't part of MakerDAO who is now indirectly invested in US-based assets?
Right.
Who gets into trouble for that?
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to be a little bit complex there.
Yeah, I wonder if the solution is some sort of carve out where provided we can show we've done our side of the work, if it becomes known, there shouldn't really be a way to be punished for it. But until somebody carves that out, the SEC is going to come knock in,
And plus the SEC under Gary Gensler is really very, very into enforcement regulation by enforcement.
Yeah.
So because of that, and it's really, really surprising because China, I don't know if you noticed this 2 days ago, I think they might have teased the next bull run because they were talking about like Bitcoin and yields on national TV,
Interesting.
and which was blew my mind because they've gone hot and cold with crypto about
allowing
4
mining
times.
again.
Yeah.
Which was always confusing to me because if you looked at Bitmain's model, every time they created a new type of miner, they were testing the miner for 4 to 6 months in their warehouses, and once they've driven up the difficulty level up, then they're like, here you go, here's for like 500x markup.
Right.
So they have if Fidelity has a huge stash of Bitcoin, I wonder how much Bitmain has.
Right.
So it was almost in China's interest, and now you can see the race between Beijing, Guangzhou, and Hong Kong, where they've each dedicated from city council money about $12 to $25 million per year, which might not seem like much to us, but in China, it's all of the money.
And the second that anything runs, it's way more money. You know? Like, and it doesn't need to move a ton for it to be better than anywhere else you can put your money.
No,
right?
and Chinese capital VC funds are going big on Web3.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
In
That
the
makes
last
sense.
2 or 3 weeks.
So you guys are taking off, I assume. But just out of curiosity, like especially because we're going to be posting this and stuff, who are you looking for right now? Who is your customer? If you could meet people today and you had time for it, who would those people
So our
be?
primary customers are individuals that already own assets that have either been underwriting those assets or selling those assets to their customer base of accredited investors. Whether under Reg A or Reg D, there's a limited pool of investors, which they have an asset. It's a yield generating asset, and they have an investor pool, but they are limited by their capital, right? Where they might have $10 million that they can cycle through every month, and now they have to wait X duration before they can sell it again, and then they can recycle that pool. What we want to assist them with is translating their assets onto the blockchain. So there's no public holidays now. It's a 24/7 follow the sun market, right? Then you get instant liquidity. Then if they're actually utilizing any third-party platforms, those third-party platforms charge fees that are a percentage of the transaction volume. We want to change it to a flat fee, whether you're transacting $1 or $1 million. It doesn't matter. So individuals that already have experience creating those kinds of asset classes and marketing those kinds of asset classes, we want to help them attain a higher level of liquidity, bake in compliance and audits, which one of our clients that we worked with, they were for gemstones, like actual historically significant gemstones that was stolen from temples in India back in the British Raj. And we essentially reduced the cost of compliance with E&Y from $300,000 to about $50,000 a year because they were able to custody them with a third party. And now because that when the chain of custody is not broken, E&Y doesn't have to come in and validate it every time because they can rely on
it's right here.
Yeah, it's right here. So really, what we're offering our customers: increased liquidity, compliance baked in, removal of bureaucratic red tape around the administrative work that goes into compliance, and 24/7 access to their markets.
That's brilliant. That's really cool.
But really, where we want to go in the future, and this is where I see with MakerDAO already doing it, if MakerDAO is onboarding real world assets, I don't think we're too far away from getting really, really blue chip assets that have a history approved with MakerDAO and other similar DeFi platforms, where our clients and customers can come in and stake their asset and take out loans against those assets. Right. So again, you don't have to go to a bank and get your appraisal done. You don't have to pay absurd third party fees. Right. It's more bringing that credit union concept.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's way cool. Well, I'm excited to watch you guys progress. I'm gonna find you on LinkedIn real soon.
Absolutely.
Or you can go to our website, nomyx.io.
Nomyx.io.
Find us on LinkedIn.
Okay. We'll make sure the links are down on the video. We would love to chat.
You should have us back on.
Yeah.
I just can't talk. Like I wanted to jump into it, but we can't talk about it.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Once that stuff's available, 100%.
Yeah, because it will
come talk.